Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
You kids listening to this, all you podcast wannabes, growing up to be a podcaster. Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
My name is David Bell.
I'm guest hosting. My name is Abe Epperson.
And we just watched Warfare. What is it good for?
Maybe
nothing.
making its money back on the box office, but other than that, nothing.
Oh, he's back. That's the fourth fucking time he's done that.
So you're peeking at probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
Just to start, Abe, thank you so much for being on.
Dude, thank you.
You're my guest for this.
Yes.
And I am so excited to talk with you about an Alex Garland film.
Yes.
For obvious reasons.
Yes.
But before we get started, do you want to plug some stuff? Tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, let's get it out of the way. If you are intrigued by any of this or want to hear more of me or people who are like me, and even funnier, you can go over to patreon.com/smallbeans. We do a lot of what Gamefully Unemployed does, talk TV, movie, video games, wellness, and I'm joined there by, if you've heard the names, Michael Swaim or Adam Ganzer, then you're in the know. But that's it. Come check us out. And yeah, let's get on with the show, huh?
Yeah. We for reasons, this is all to say, I don't know what's coming out this weekend when this is coming out, but this was one that felt like it sort of passed me by.
Yeah.
It's Alex Garland who directed Civil War. He directed Annihilation. He directed Ex Machina, Men. He wrote a lot of those too. He wrote this.
He worked with Danny Boyle. He's got 28 Years Later coming out soon.
He made Devs.
He made the very good miniseries Devs.
I'm a huge fan of Alex Garland.
Me too. That's probably why we're excited to talk about this.
Yes, because this was also, and I'll just say this up top, the first one of his movies that I wasn't excited to watch. Meaning that I was sort of I was pretty lukewarm on Civil War. I thought Civil War was, we've talked about this. I think it missed the mark. But he's still a fantastic director and writer. And then I'm just not a big war movie guy. So when I saw this, right, I was just like, what the fuck is the point of this? I just wanted to start with that. And now I want to ask you, how did you like this movie?
Well, I want to add one more input in before we start evaluating, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Just that this is the one where, because this one got past me too, because it wasn't really marketed as an Alex Garland thing, and kind of rightfully so, even though
it's co-directed.
Co-directed, but if I recall around the time the news cycles came out, it was during the time he was saying, I'm done kind of directing. I don't want to direct as much anymore. I'll keep writing, but I'm just putting the directing on a backseat. It's just too much work. And there's something that he said during the press, during research of this, is it really was Ray Mendoza's project. It's his idea. He's even a character in the thing. And so Alex Garland was kind of sounds like a Yoda Luke kind of situation, or at the very least a Spielberg Hooper for Poltergeist. He seems like he was there, but actually very hands off. Maybe, larger strokes of maybe if you try this type of stuff. But I think we have to give Ray Mendoza for whatever, if we like this or don't, are his flowers or
Put it
whatnot.
on him. Yeah, because for the record, Ray Mendoza is the military advisor on Civil War as well as a bunch of other movies. And it seems like this came from a real story. That he involved in this story.
He is one of the characters. There's
Got
a
it.
Ray Mendoza. He cast himself, so to speak, although it's
Right.
fictionalized and based off of remembrances of the events,
Right.
I think as it says in the title card, instead of like, it's not based off of like true events. There's stipulations for each of these, and this is one that's kind of like wide and kind of like, well,
So
we'll just add characters here and there and stuff like that.
Right. It's not based off like some big historical thing. It's not Saving Private Ryan where it's like, oh, I know this big war event. Like, obviously the war I know of, but like it's about a small story in a larger war that people didn't really talk about. Like, it's not about the Osama bin Laden raid. You know what I mean?
No,
but
yeah.
it seems like my impression was that they worked together in Civil War. Ray got talking to Alex Garland and was like, listen, I've always wanted to tell this story. I want to be a director. And they got along. They liked each other. And Garland was like, yeah, man, I'll put my name on it. I'll get you started. Like, that's what it
sounds like.
feels
That's kind of what it was, but they were probably in the editing room and stuff like that. There's a lot of really, and to kind of segue into like, what does the film look and feel like? And did I enjoy watching it? I kind of did. It's such a small film, and like you, war is not like my big thing. I don't like war films that often. I mean, there's sometimes anti-war films I'm a big fan of. A lot of that, like 2025, I'll say, is a hell of a year for just a straight war film. So much attention is being paid to building these guys up in like non-traditional ways for soldiers, like not like Platoon would do or like Apocalypse Now. And all the films I think we're mentioning are kind of anti-war films, but like, I don't know, to kind of paraphrase Werner Herzog, there really isn't an anti-war film that's ever been made. Maybe a handful, maybe like a Come and See or something like that. But at a certain point, you're going to have to build up these soldiers and say, like, these are the good guys and you want them to survive. And these other guys on the other side may have their depth, but they're going to try to stop the guys that you like, right? So take, for example, the Cosmo Jarvis character. Hell of a name. Great actor. He was in Shogun as like the star British guy.
Which character is this?
And he's the sniper in this.
I got it.
And at one point, there's a prolonged shot of his crosshairs, like, because this is something the movie does a lot of, where it like just lets you be in the shot and
There's
experience.
a lot of tension in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah,
with this.
kind of like rear window tension too. It's not like tension of like I'm moving through a space and there's going to be something that jumps out at me or something I didn't expect.
But you know, like, we're not watching this unless something happens. So you're waiting. You're like, when is the thing gonna happen?
And it's like this super long shot where you're like, is he gonna shoot someone or something gonna go down? And then it's just looking at a bunch of men one by one for almost like a minute sustained. And we're basically just profiling them. That's what this is what war is. Like we see an insert though. It cuts to an insert of his hand not on the trigger. He's showing safety trigger protocol where he's kind of got it straight. And you notice that the knob is turned to safe. So it's like, that's something that in like Black Hawk Down or like Platoon or like even Apocalypse Now, all these older films, and even especially films during like the post 9/11 era, like they wouldn't care about this because it would be kind of about the dehumanization of the others, the side that is the side that isn't an American side,
Right.
Whether it's the Russians or Arabs, it's like, oh, okay, those guys are the bad guys, and that's why kind of war movies have begun to sour.
Yeah, that's why like Clint Eastwood did a really cool thing with Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima.
Kind of Rashomon it up a little bit.
Yeah, where they're like, all right, look, everybody has a side.
So in a 2025, what does that look like? What's a warfare picture? And it's like, it's not trying to show how good they're not like, what's his name? American Sniper, Ryan or whatever, a guy who
Right,
could
I
shoot
think
the best. They're just
people-
really good protocols, and they're trying to do the least amount of harm they're doing. That's the best we can do with these soldiers. That's an interesting kind of like film to make, right?
So people talked about this being like that that meme that was like, not only will we invade your country, but 20 years later we'll make films about how bad it made us feel.
Yeah.
And I saw people reference warfare with that. And I will say this isn't really about the war itself, which is weird to say, meaning that this could have been any war. It's not trying to make a statement about the war in Iraq, which obviously is very loaded. And one of the reasons I didn't want to watch this for that tweet where I'm like, I don't want to fucking think about, the war in Iraq, man. We were heroes there. Because I know it was all bullshit. Mm-hmm. I do want to note, I really liked this movie. And in fact, this is my like hot take that doesn't need to exist. But I actually think, because I don't need to compare movies, but I think this actually did a way better job at showing the horrors of war and deterring you from war than Civil War did. Like, I think this did what I wish Civil War had done. This showed this like way more grounded reality. For people who don't know the movie, it is in mostly real time. And it is just the story of this group of soldiers in a house that's not their house, keeping the family in a room. The family's, scared and pissed, and they don't shy away from that. But again, it's like it's still trying to be centered on the soldiers. It shows that it's like they're clearly like, the first thing you see is they see a house and he goes, I like this house, let's take it. And then that's, and like he means strategically, but like, and then they basically just take over someone's house and they don't shy away from how shitty that is, but it's also not the point of the movie. And then they get attacked. 2 of them get injured. 1 of them dies, and they're in the house and they're just trying to get these injured people out. And that's it. Like that's, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
I'm not cutting it.
Cool.
That's the movie, right? In real time of like, we have to get these injured soldiers out of here.
Yeah.
And it's very boring at first. And like you said, like they're not depicting them as like evil people, which I'm sure a lot of people would see them that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're invading somebody's house and invading somebody's country. But there are little details about that I liked. Like we're
the
gonna spoil
ending,
this.
we should let's wait till the ending for like the closer to the end of the podcast, because I don't want to. I kind of want to live in what the world they paint is, which is kind of interesting.
They're not shying away from that fact, and in fact, like the ending sort of points that out.
Yeah.
That it's like they're the problem. Like it's not other people who are the problem. Right. They're in somebody's house. They've invaded. And so like, and basically the entire mood is that they're like, they're not like nonchalant. They're not like, yeah, war is cool, but they're all business. You know what I mean? And even when
they're just trying to do
happening,
the best job they can based off what they've been told. They're soldiers.
Right.
They're not making decisions.
It's pretty boring at first.
I mean, they are, but they're making breakneck decisions based off little information, and the information they get
with each other, and
even though it's very like it's designed to be very effective communication, it's not all necessarily stuff that gets you any closer to understanding why we're doing this. We just I need to be here at this time. Okay. Oh, right.
It feels like
it's fucked. I need help. That's all you can really say as a soldier, it seems.
At first, it feels like they're at work, where they're just like it has none of those war tropes where it's like I got a bad feeling about this man or anything like that. It's just them like doing the work, being like, okay, I'm seeing these people over there. Are you seeing those people?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep an eye on them.
Forward.
Look for any crowds gathering, and it's very by the book.
Yeah, it's very by the book, and they're working as a very effective team. That's something that this movie does. That it's like, even though it starts with the first thing we see is these are warm-blooded American boys who like tits and ass.
You start with that, yeah.
They're like before we show them infiltrating a house, we just get the shot of them watching some ladies doing aerobics, and it looks like it's from the 90s, but like I guess it is 2000 like six or whatever this is.
This is what we're fighting for.
But they're like, this is what we're fighting for, and it's like one of those things that kind of like it's kind of whiplash to, and then they're off at work and they're nothing like that they were.
Right.
Which was kind of like almost like kids. And now that they're at their job, they know to be this certain thing.
It's sort of like most war movies go from, woo, look at us rowdy kids, straight to, oh my God, my legs are gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This
there's like,
takes a
let's
step
really
between it.
jump into the worst of the two. And this is like, no, we're going to slow roll you. In fact, like, I'm glad you mentioned other traditional war films. Something like 1917, for example, does a very effective job of showing that there's so many things happening everywhere, the utter chaos of the battlefield. This is like a slow, almost suburban view of war. The quiet is more prominent. The tension is more like, when is the bomb going to go off instead of, wow, is it going to come near me because there's so many bombs, you know? It emphasizes the blast radius of the fight, the slow realization of the damage, how quickly something can be torn apart, how small like a piece of ricochet can fuck you up, and how long it takes you to realize your leg is gone. Like that is what this movie is about, as opposed to...
It's not about the scale.
The scale. It's not about scale. It's about small moments.
Like a good
it's
comparison
very effective.
Yeah, the opening of Saving Private Ryan, which it's like the gold standard, shows individuals and stuff, but it's such a large scale of like, look at all this death around me. And like you do spend a little time, there's obviously scenes where characters are dying and stuff. This felt like a really grounded look at like shock that in the onset of that, and how this, because when they first, so what happens is someone hucks a grenade in.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, that's not...
The whole movie is a grenade and a missile. Those are the only two things that fuck it up. And I love that they're shooting constantly into just the abyss.
Yeah, they're just...
wildly, and their bullets do nothing. These are concrete.
No one gets shot. I don't think.
Like you don't see anything
none
from
of
the
them
other side. Yeah.
But the grenade is actually not that climactic. They just go like, oh shit, grenade. One guy gets like shrapnel, like there's some injuries.
Yeah.
And but it's not like so bad that they're like screaming. They're still kind of calm. Like they're like, we're taking fire.
Even the guy
they
who took
know
the
that
damage.
they're still like the big dogs on the street where they're like,
it's fine. We'll just get out of here, you know.
Yeah.
And no one's worried, especially the sniper who actually gets bloodied. But he's like, even when they're like, are you okay? And they do like a check, he's like, all right, no, fucking, it's fine. Let's speed this along. You know, like even though his fingers cut up and he's got like a wound on his arm.
And that's again why it's showing like gradients of war, where it's like the reality setting in isn't some big climactic moment where it's like, okay, they're getting shot at. They're more stressed, obviously, but they're still at work. And
but
they're still
no one's
kind
taking
of
down
like
a Death Star here, you know?
Right, and they're all still kind of not casual, but they're not like freaked out, right?
Yeah.
And so they went from bored to like, okay, now we're on, and then they bring it out to evacuate him to the tank or whatever, and that's when a missile hits, and it's like it's the halfway point,
and it fucks
and then
up
it's
everything.
just like everything is different now.
Right, because it was a well-placed missile.
Yeah.
Before, it was kind of a well-placed grenade, but not really. Like, it wasn't that effective. But this missile, which any given Sunday, any missile at any time, could hit something near them, and they would have the same kind of, attitude about it. But this one happens to basically kill two of them almost. And there's legs on the ground and stuff like that. There's another one that this is really familiar with because it follows like guys of the same age. It's just a single platoon. Let's just follow these people. And it's an HBO series called Generation Kill, made by
I love that.
David Simon, who made The Wire. And that's more about the incompetence of the upper. Like, it makes sense for the guy who made The Wire to make something that's more about the anthemic issues that like keep us locked into incompetence and overt pride running the show as opposed to logistics and concerns about safety. But you look at the attitudes of, for lack of a better word, these kids in both of these things, and they can be totally comfortable. There's one thing in Generational Kill where I believe one of the guy Avery, or I don't know, one of the higher up, like, well-to-do Captain America dudes is like, is Iraq safe? And he's like behind a tire, and he's like, right now I'm behind this tire. Iraq is a fairly safe country. If I take a few steps over there, it is no longer a safe country for me. And he's just trying to show like the kind of relativism that kind of warps these minds as they go into danger. Because for a lot of us, we who are not confronted with danger on a day-to-day basis, any danger is like a little too much, so we might overreact. These guys have had danger on their mind for so long that it's like they can't even know the ebbing and the flowing of the danger. Is it a real danger, or is it a danger that we're all going to be fine? And like it's trying to acclimate us as the audience that there is a very clear indication to most of these soldiers of what that is.
And what I thought the main thing this is about, the main takeaway I got from this, I guess, is like with that danger and stuff like that, I felt like the main thing they wanted to point out is, I guess I'm going to call it like the cycle of indifference. And what I mean is that what we keep seeing is in this movie is various stages of indifference being thrust upon people who are not indifferent, who feel like they're in danger. So like they go into this house, right? They grab this family who's crying, who's panicked, who's like, why the fuck are you in here? And they're like at work, right? So this missile, and then we see even when they're shot at, they're still, like you said, they still have this view of like, we know how safe we are. The moment legs get blown off and the missile hits, they become babies.
They become
yeah.
Like
and
I imagine we all would,
because like some of them go into shock. One of them is just like he has to like give up command at one point because he's like, I'm fucked up, man.
Yeah, he cedes command to OP2, which is the guys who come save the first guys.
And
he's like, you take
wave.
over, and that's the second half of the show. Yeah,
and I think that's the key thing, and that what makes this unique as a story. Like if I had to pitch this story, this would be the crux of it, is that basically two of them are now, their legs are fucked up. We stay really close to their pain. We hear their screams. They spend so much time just on these two guys trying to deal with their wounds and them like crying out. One of them is just knocked unconscious for a while and you don't even know if he's alive. Or it's like you can't tell, and then this new group comes in to save them. And that new group is exactly like they were at the start of the movie. I thought.
Exactly. It's like
where it's
they're
like
the same.
It's like when you're at the hospital and you're like scared and you're on the worst day of your life, and then someone walks by you and they're going to lunch, and it's like this feeling of like, how can you be so fucking heartless around me? And they're like, because if I can't feel everybody's pain. This is my job.
Yeah.
But you realize that cycle, and like it's sort of showing that idea of like, I think it's showing way better that whiplash of war from like, woo, war, to like, we're at work, there's these people crying and screaming, there's gunshots off where that doesn't concern us, to suddenly like, I need help, I'm in pain, and you're looking up at these dudes who aren't even bothering to like not step on your leg.
Yeah, they like bump his leg and stuff like that. One of my favorite one is after all the stuff goes down where they're like, all right, we're going to actually leave this time. And we have bent the rules and cheated through the comms a little bit to get our way, which is to get more tanks to come save us, because we're basically just we're done. Like if no one pays attention to what's going to happen, they're just going to overrun us for sure. And at that moment, the new commander, the commanding officer, is like, all right, well, let's make sure we go back into the most dangerous part of everything, which is the street that they're fired upon with the missile, and make sure we pick up their gear.
Yeah.
And that's on top of the CO and in even higher up, the one that they're trying to get on comms, is like, I'm not even going to send tanks to you guys because it's too hot of an area for us to waste any more soldiers. So not only, it's not that we have that incompetence, but it's like, because they won't even send, they're cheap as hell, they won't even try to save them. And then these soldiers still do things that are like, well, we got to make sure we get this axe and this this gun, because then the enemy would get it, and we can't have that, can we? Let's not. And it's just, it kind of shows that I wouldn't call them necessarily hypocrisies, but like there's just these weird perplexities of like, why are we doing that? It almost makes no sense. And it's like, well, we're just doing the best we can and trying to push forward. And it's like, okay, you're just doing that because you just want us to all avoid thinking about the fact that no one knows what they're doing. And it's like, yes, we're trying to make your mind occupied.
Right.
You know,
I think what was interesting with that stuff is like, I think a lot of war movies, they love this narrative, right? Which is war is hell. You're going to go to war. Again, it'll be all fun and games until the war starts, and then
over.
And then you're going to get shot in the gut, and you're going to die holding your buddy's hand while they watch you die, and it's going to be really sad, right?
Yeah.
And then your buddy is going to go home, and like some politician or whatever will say that you're bad, or like hippies will yell at you, right? And you won't be appreciated. This does an interesting thing, I thought, which is in that version, the soldiers are always in it together and they're always buddies and they all understand. But this adds the added thing of like, you're going to get shot, you're going to be dying, and your buddy won't be holding your hand. He'll be busy. People are busy doing other things and like getting equipment and like following protocol, and it's like the other soldiers aren't going to be your friend either. They're not. Right. It's like everybody is just doing other things and busy, and like
there is
this dumb protocol where like once that guy is dead, his leg is just there the whole time.
Yep.
And it's just there. It's just an object now. It's just what
are we going to do with that leg? Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a sequence in this that I thought that not only kind of elaborates exactly what you're trying to say in a very like visual way, but I had never seen it before, which is so there's this moment that we've seen time and time again, which is like a fairly typical PTSD shell shock kind of performance, which is we're going in and out of sound. Sometimes we're usually with the screams of these two men who are dying.
Yeah.
And it's hectic, right? It's like crazy hectic. And we've seen this all before where it's just like someone's looking around and sees their buddy and they're doing something, and sees their buddy and they're doing something, and they even forget they can't. At one point he's trying to get the tourniquet on and he can't really do it because he's shaking all that stuff we've seen before. And then there's this moment where he kind of like dials in, or like our Mendoza tries to go like, okay, I can do this one thing and just put pressure on it. I can do that. And all of the audio goes away. And we just get this calm, like not calm, but like orderly comms chatter where it's just like you can tell it's fucked and they're very urgent, but they're just like trying to get things done.
Right. They're like overlapping a little bit.
They're overlapping and kind of trying to finish each other's sentences to just move things along, but they're trying to stay on the protocol. And then visually, in terms of what the movie's doing, is you're on the ground. You'd expect it to be fucked, like because the comms are like urgent, and the ground should be even more urgent, right? But it's just a guy trying to drag another guy's body, and it's very hard for him to do.
Right.
And it's just that juxtaposition where we've seen the chaos is chaos all the way down, and like it just keeps. Nested chaos keeps occurring. That's Saving Private Ryan for sure. This movie is one of the first movies I've ever seen in terms of that trope where it's like, let's show the mundane aspects of war on top of the mundane aspects of war, and that's going to be chilling to you, the audience member. And I thought that was great. I thought that was really effective use of filmmaking there.
Again, it's that feeling of like your life is in chaos and there's just people around you. It's business as usual. And like that's why I think it's like a really good deterrent of war, which is like it's a very good version of like it's going to feel meaningless. Like if you're dying, it's not going to feel heroic. It's not, and other movies have obviously done that. But it was a really good moment of like this pain is going to be lost in the shuffle of everything else. It's too big around you. And there's too many people dealing with their own shit that like it shows the futility a lot more this movie, I think, than a lot of movies.
It's also got like a zone of interest kind of deal going where we don't see the others, the enemy, as much. Like we see him in wide shots, we see him in the distance firing and ducking under,
we see
this
him like
brutalist concrete jungle. But I don't know. What's interesting is, or some people might actually still continue to lob, this kind of criticism at this movie, and I think it's fair, which is that war movies have always lived and breathed in a sympathy for a side. I kind of mentioned, obviously, war films have a dense propagandist past.
That's why I don't like war films usually.
Yeah, and arguably they're less popular than ever before. I mean, we have, like I've mentioned, 1917, and there's been a few other ones recently. And so the genre remains, but it's like most modern war films take a ton of time to emphasize that A, war is hell, like you were saying, and B, our soldiers are for the most part well trained and take all the right things seriously, which this movie does as well. And if you don't show the other side's humanity, the genre as a whole is designed kind of to dehumanize, right? And this movie is kind of doing that as well. It's so to speak, dehumanizing, taking away. There is, I would say, exceptions that they do pretty effectively near the end, where we check back in with the two families that they've been inhabiting this space.
Yeah,
for
I want to talk about
hours.
the end scene. Yeah,
and it's like that is to thwart the dehumanization thing. For example, I think one of the women says like, "Why are you doing this?"
That's all. So it ends basically with them being, once they finally are leaving, they're like they make the tanks shoot at their own roof, and by their own they mean this family. Like they just fuck up these people's house.
They're just like, there might be people on top, so we should kill them and then we'll get out. That's a home.
Yeah, this is what I mean, where it's like the movie is definitely not ignoring it, which is that they show up at the house and they're like, why is there a brick wall here? And they ask the inhabitant and he's like, it's apartments. And they're like, all right, break down the wall. And it's like, you just immediately go around, guys. And it's like, no, we'll just go right through this wall. So they break down the wall and so they're trashing these people's homes, and at the end, for their own tactical reason, they blow up the top of the building. And as they're leaving, we've only heard the husband, and the lady there finally just screams, "Why? Why
did you do that?"
They leave, and then spoiler for the very
final
ending.
Shot,
The final shot is them leaving, and everything is quiet again, and the enemy essentially wanders out in the street, and they're just all like, they're fine. It's peaceful. And you yourself, at least I did in that moment, realized, well, that lady has a point. Why the fuck were they even there in the first place?
It has
like
this
they
feeling
never
that
explain it.
We were the ones who we infiltrated and tried to fuck up homes. And we can agree or disagree on the larger scopes of any particular conflict or war. That's not what I think this podcast would be about, nor do I think it's what the movie is about. And I don't think it should affect your enjoyment or disliking of the movie, honestly. It's just to say that sometimes it feels that perplexing.
It does make a point to never really say what their mission is, what they're doing. And so when that lady screams why, I think that was all they needed to have someone say because you yourself suddenly go like, oh, right, why were they here? And you realize you don't really know. The entire conflict was that they were in this place that wasn't theirs. So they got injured and needed to leave. And once they leave, everything's back to normal and quiet, like the opening of the movie was quiet when they first got there. So you realize, like, well, they're the problem. They showed up, everything got awful and loud, and then they fucked up and had to leave. And once they leave, everybody's like, now we can go back to normal. And so, like,
this to me is the power of what propaganda does. I mean this in a demeaning way to propaganda. Like, we are so used to seeing those Black Hawk Downs where it's like, or like Spy Game or some shit like that, where it's like people looking through binoculars, looking at all these middle-aged men, usually of of Muslim descent, and like looking at them and going like, okay, these guys might be the guys who are like, and so we're used to that kind of film grammar. And this movie actually successfully goes like flips you from your expectations of that in the first act, where you're watching our guys look at these other guys going like, okay, those must be bad guys, right? Because I know how this goes. I've been alive during the 2000s. And then you cut to the end, and the shots, yes, there's still plumes of smoke, and there's debris on the ground and remnants of tank fire upon these this suburban area that's basically made of concrete. So there's actually very little damage. And you feel like the calmest anything has ever been. And the way like life has returned back to the way it quote should be.
Right.
And it's just, you take the Americans out of the equation.
Right.
And that's an powerful flip of film grammar to say like, here's another shot of a middle-aged man, the same guy, in fact, you saw early in the thing, but because he's not in like under a film scope, you don't think that he's a possible threat or enemy. You just see a guy.
Right. I was half expecting the people who came out with guns to like help the family too. And like that's what's implied is like, yeah, this is their
I think
neighborhood.
That would be too much. I think that would be conclaving it, you know.
It is that idea like this is their fucking neighborhood. It was like, yeah, it's sort of like you look at other movies where they're like have to do an extraction. It's always that idea that as they're leaving the war behind, where it's like off on the helicopter and the war is still happening. And what they're pointing out is like, no, they're the war. Where they go, the war goes.
The war is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so that was, again, without saying too much, and it doesn't feel like it's trying to say, it's like, it's doing a good job at like, not, like, obviously this was made by someone who is there. So it's not shaming those people. Like I'm sure this movie might make them even off to be more heroic than they are. Who can say? I can't say. I wasn't there. But it's like, you know, I don't know if these people were also like were this like professional and were this by the book or weren't racist or shitty
like
or
most things in the world. Some were, some weren't. Were worse,
right?
You know,
it's not exploring that.
It's not
trying to, but it is pointing out that very simple idea of like, yeah, and it was it's us, you know, like just visually by just pointing that out very simply, it did more than a lot of war movies do in showing that, right? Where,
I mean, the benefit is because it's so small stakes. It's not trying to show organized, you know, maneuvers. We don't talk to a single general.
A lot of war movies, what they try to do is justify. And what I mean is like, they'll do the scene where the local boy, they like give him some bread and then the local boy gets shot by Al-Qaeda. And they're like, see, we're doing it for them too. You know, they'd have a scene like that. Or they love that where liberators
Americans
are like,
will do something awful, but then they'll go like, but how many lives did we save? You know,
or
like,
it'll be like, or it'll go the other way where it'll be like, yeah, that guy, what a terrible thing that guy did. One bad apple, or like, or someone will reflect on this war is useless. Like they play with that, but this was just very simply like, it doesn't dig into it. It's just like, yeah, this all feels useless, doesn't it? And it feels like it's uniquely American as a problem too, because we're such fucking, we love war. We have so many wars where we go, war follows.
Well, you feel the like absurdity of the imperialism is what you feel. Every decision feels like it's being handed down from like shoddy intelligence. No one really gets the intelligence. People just get the thrust of the decision that's being made. People are very good about staying alert at the time, but events occur that completely throw all of their learning into the trash immediately,
right? Because
people are screaming and no one knows where to go and no one's listening to anyone. So by nature, the human animal, which, you know, can become fairly chaotic fairly quickly, is not designed for this kind of behavior. So that feels like a strange absurdity. And then on top of everything else, it's like, what did we gain here? Which I think war movies have done that for large in part the last 40 years, 50 years. Like it has been quote unquote anti-war movies, even if they're like, look how cool Rambo is. They're still an anti-war movie. That's why, you know, a lot of criticists will kind of critics will be like, oh, there isn't any war movies. I'm not saying this one is the most war movie. It still has a lot of those pitfalls, but I don't think you have a movie without those pitfalls. You need to root for someone somewhat. I mean, even in Come and See,
that they're carrying out.
Even
right?
Come
Where
and
it's-
See, you're sympathizing with the victim the whole time. The kid is a victim, and
Right.
you're just following him around. So that has the benefit of the fact that he's not even if he's trying to soldier up, he can't really soldier up because he doesn't really have the power to become a soldier, and he's
Yeah.
not in the right place or at the right time. In this movie, they are soldiers. They've been in place there by mission command, and they're supposed to do these things. So it's inevitable that if you want to root for anyone, or if you want to set up some form of game where there's protagonist and antagonist, or any sort of game or argument where you're like, we did this and therefore we're bad or we're good or anything like that, you have to build up or tear down these soldiers. And that makes it propagandist, is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it's more like I just appreciate this movie's not trying to solve war. It's not trying to, like, it felt like it was just very focused. It was like 90 minutes, we're going to focus on this one aspect of a larger thing. And so for that reason it is like simplistic in that it's like the characters aren't complex. They're all like, yeah, they're good guys at work. That's it, right? None of them do anything wrong. None of them abuse the power. None of them
nor are any of them like great or any of them
they're also
bad.
not
They're
heroic.
all they're human and imperfect, but they're like fairly fine. Like,
yeah, and that's where it's just like, that's why I'm like, I don't know. It's not perfect, and war movies are never perfect for this reason, for the reasons you're saying, which is like movie. I mean, it's what's his name? The guy who did Funny Games talks about this with Schindler's List, right?
unique. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like anytime you depict the Holocaust in a movie, no matter how you're doing it, you're still technically using the language of cinema to depict something that is elevated above the language of cinema, meaning that, like, this is his argument, like, where it's like the moment you use the tool of suspense to show the gas chambers, you're taking something that was real and horrible and you're putting it through the entertainment machine. And war is kind of that too, right? Where it's like movies are kind of tackle a lot of subjects that are bigger than them. It's like in sci-fi where an alien is like, you couldn't understand our language. You simply couldn't speak our language, but this is the best approximation. And that's what movies are, where it's like, a movie simply can't tackle these complexities. And it's, if only because people sit down and the first thing they think when they watch a movie is, who am I rooting for? Who's the main character? Who's the good guys?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the bad guys? And the moment you make those distinctions in a war movie, it's immediately watering down war. Like, it's immediately like putting it through a very specific lens.
In the history, in my belief, at the best art is training wheels. They're really good for that. But name a piece of art that has saved a culture or a people, or like other than symbolically so. You just don't. It doesn't happen. And so in that regard, I do see what Hennick is saying, and I love, it's funny because my brother just sent me recently like this British academic who's talking about how he's made this clickbait video where it was basically like Spielberg is actually like turning you into brain rot and stuff like that, just because it's like, yes, no, he is built upon this neoliberal kind of aesthetic, film language, the point of what he's trying to say, and all of his movies are aggrandized into a sense of, like optimism and anticipation for even no matter what confronts us, we're the right guys and we tried our best and did the right thing, which, I argue, honestly, that a lot of people would take any one of his films, and you could point at any aspect of someone and go like, oh, that's a whitewash, or that's just, not true. But like you're saying, he's building movies. He's a boomer building movies for like Gen X and millennials throughout most of his career.
Right.
Like, what are we talking about here? He's just a guy who makes movies.
Right. Which I think it is. That's why, like, this movie, what I appreciate is that they felt like they're like, let's just keep it simple. Like the best movies that need to be about something, it's like just be about one very specific aspect of it, because then you have less of this responsibility. Like it's funny, I'm reminded of horror movies where horror movies are like, this is about grief, and it's like, well, grief's a very big thing, and so it's sort of like always funny to me.
You have to lob off a piece and really inspect it, or
it's not
try to broaden your scope. You can't do both.
And horror tends to do that, where it's very funny when it's like Jordan Peele being like, this is about white people fetishizing black people, or like this is about a very specific aspect of the entertainment industry, which is like, it's funny because it feels like you're able to say something better in cinema when you do that, when you go like, okay,
of course,
and so feels like it's like, we're here to talk about the futility of war. Just the futility. There's other things. There's the tragedy of it. There's the this and that. But we're here to talk about how it just kind of feels meaningless. And
I mean, if you choose, because you get to choose all the things. You get to choose the system that you're built. So the example would be like, boy,
I just think
it would be a lot
war
easier
movies
in this
don't do
football
that.
game if it was only 20 yards to the touchdown. You know, like if you could just reimagine a different field, people wouldn't have to run as much. It changes the entire game. So of course, it's a simulacrum.
I think a lot of war movies get bogged down because they're like, we want to talk about this and that
explain,
and that. And what about the enemy? We should like humanize the enemy. And it's like, yes, you should. You should do all those things. The problem is you're making a movie, and it's really hard to do all that stuff.
I mean, it's really interesting because honestly, that's the helpful kind of attitude that destroys a ton of movies. We usually call it studio mind. Where it's like, it's not a bad idea what you're trying to do to represent this, or embolden this character arc or whatever, because we don't see that or something like that. There's many reasons too. What's the movie you're making though? Because if you're making that movie, then you're failing. You should be doing that. But if you're not making that movie, why are you trying to go ass backwards to try to achieve 9 million things? You're never going to make a movie that anyone gives a shit about, because all you've done is just pointed a very one-dimensional light on 80 million things.
Right. You also, if you do hone in on something, you have to make sure you're honing in on the right thing, right?
Yeah. So that's enough to tackle for a movie. And Warfare gets it, especially.
I think so. Again,
especially for a war film in 2025. I was surprised to be like, wow, this is actually on one of the tops of my list. Yeah. Even though I dislike war films for the most part.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is like there's a lot this movie isn't doing, and you could call that a critique of the movie. It just feels like for a hyper-focused movie that like did want to, like, it felt like it was pretty responsible depiction for what it was trying to accomplish. The narrow thing it was trying to accomplish, it still left room for the reminder of like, and we were in their country. Like,
it didn't try to correct history or anything like that.
Exactly.
It just gave one night for these guys. And we can't help but say, like, so what are you saying? This is how it would always operate. It's weird when, like, artists and filmmakers are able to go, like, no, I was just talking about one night. None of this has ever happened before as far as I'm concerned. No, like, Ray Mendoza was there. He obviously has thoughts about the war.
Yeah.
He just didn't write all of them down, I think.
Yeah.
In this movie, and that's fine. In fact, that I think should be more shared than a lot of what we do with politics and identity involvement.
Especially for a new like writer or filmmaker, where it's like you want to get it all out immediately, and it's like that's why I want to make a dent.
Like what am I? How can I be marketable? Am I the war guy? Am I a guy who does like shows sympathy for monsters? Like what do I do effectively?
And this felt very like, it just felt the restraint was really, really well done.
And that's, that's one of the reasons I like Garland too. Is I think that's probably part of the learning is that by not going for the sensational thing and going for kind of the more, like true, humble, less sexy thing in a lot of instances, it shows
up
kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's all subjective. That's highly subjective, what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, just assess this as a,
but
the story it's trying to tell, and so on and so forth.
But ultimately, I haven't been impressed. I wouldn't say since Saving Private Ryan, because I've seen some, like 1917 was something to behold.
I really
for
liked
sure.
1917.
But like, there was some. I thought walking in this movie, and one of the other reasons I'm not like super into the genre is I'm like, I've seen all the tricks, I've seen like, oh, is he shell shocked, like Omaha Beach, oh, can't hear stuff, oh, there's a high pitched thing and everything's slow motion. It's like stuff like that. But like any number of us, because we've lived in media our entire life, and most of media in terms of film and television has developed while we're alive in its formative years. So our knowledge of the lexicon and our film grammar capabilities as just an average watcher are fucking phenomenal compared to someone even 25 years ago. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's no way they're going to revolutionize. And I wouldn't say they did, but there's no way they're even going to update how a war movie can be shot. I think this is so small stakes, and like in terms of like, it's not like if 1917 did stuff that I see in this, maybe we'd see a bunch of other war films that are going to show these kind of maneuvers. But if you just watch this movie and think about the editing, think about the sound design, think about how the shots are kind of composed, there's a lot of new stuff going on that I've never seen in a war film that I was impressed by, just as, sequence building, just as I want to build a system for you to think, oh no, what if is that going to happen right now? And my ability to control your eye line and your sight as the viewer and drag your attention from here and there within a time limit shows such an expertise that I'm watching this Ray Mendoza guy.
Yeah. It's always hard when the pitch is like, no, but it's really good. Because like that was part of where they're like, all right, it's about the war in Iraq. And I was like, whatever. They're like, no, you don't get it. It's going to be all in real time. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, again,
been there, done that,
like that. But then when you watch it, you're like, man, this does feel like something I hadn't seen before. There's little things. It's hard to describe everything. But little things of like, there's no music, obviously. And that, again, didn't surprise me. But like the sound design in general, when they start getting fired at, it doesn't sound like typical gunfire, probably because this guy was there and knows what this sounds like. You're really just hearing impacts, not the pew pew. So it's like whap, 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 whap. Yeah, and you realize like
debris
it's things
sounds
like that.
Like everything's sandy and dusty, and because it's all crumbling together.
There's all
from
this attention,
gunshots.
Yeah, to little things like that. That's just little details where I was just like, oh, maybe I've seen it before, but in this combination, it feels fresh and it feels really realistic, and while maintaining things like pacing and like tension and the tension building up, and like you said, like stuff like when they get hit, the explosion, where it's like, okay, we all have done this moment in a movie. Sound drops out, you get the tinnitus. Like
there's a few of those, yeah.
And
it's almost like that's just the starting point of this movie, which is what feels great.
Yeah, and even that sequence, it's like it becomes night, and you like it was aspects like that, the breathing, where you're just like, right, yeah, they wouldn't be able to see, they won't be able to breathe.
Yeah, I kept forgetting that there's phosphorus all over half them, and they keep like checking in, like, can you breathe? And he's like, yeah, I can breathe, I'm fine. And it's that kind of check-in stuff.
And the way, like, the guy is, like, saying, like, oh, no, oh, fuck, but he's louder than normal because he can't fucking hear.
Yeah.
And, like, just little, like, all in the performances where it was just, like, beautifully crafted.
More in terms of what I imagine verisimilitude, in terms of... We've all seen the maybe Overwatch is not the right term, but, like, the drone footage where it's black and white and it's, like, shown from, like, someone who's, like... It's like a video game.
Even that felt fresh.
That felt fresh because they did two things that I thought was really cool. One, which is the maneuver where when people are walking from one street to another, and we're really talking about a cross section of like 8 to 10 streets.
Yeah.
And it's like looking over to the left and then sees like a few guys and it's like, okay, there's our guys. And you're getting this kind of informal narration from people checking in, like I can see you get Oscar Mike Lima, bullshit that you don't understand. But you can tell that the operator who's like saying the narration is like, oh shit, and there's a bunch of other guys, they're over there, and he's like unsure of what to, because he's not there to give commands, he's just there to say there's guys immediately to your north if you want to deal with that. And it's just like he has no power, and he has so much power because he has sight. And I thought that I had never seen that, because you almost see it as like the hammer of Thor that comes down, kind of like what they do with the they have an expression for it where they have a flyover. What is it called?
Show of force. It is just a useless act where it's just like have a plane sweep down so it makes them scared,
and it just makes a tornado essentially, and it's just like that's great. The other thing I like from the overhead drone footage is that they did this thing where they kind of zoom in on one person walking, and you're like, what is that person? And you can kind of see what they look like, and you're like, why does it look like they don't have legs? And then you cuts to who that person is with real camera, and it's a woman and just walking, and you're like, oh, she's got a dress on, so you couldn't see the feet like the other guys. That it was just so weird where it's just like, oh, a woman who's dressed like a woman, like classically dressed like a woman in a war zone, even to the optics looks a little different and strange to your eyes, where you can't make it out, because all these other dudes are all, they look like they're wearing all the same shit. So bulkier and all that. And it's just like that kind of perspective is the kind of thing where it's just like you kind of have to have been there and seen that kind of stuff. A lot of really
little things, yeah. And you mentioned like looking through the sniper scope parts. That's also a part where it's like I've seen this a million times, but it's so long and drawn out, and it's sort of like you're seeing little details, and you're seeing like a guy peeking out, and then you're following another guy, and it's sort of this feeling of like, I don't know really who we should be looking at rooftops, and you keep waiting for that inevitable like sniper to pop up or something. And also, it's just using these long tension scope shots where like a lot of movies wouldn't have the patience for like just sticking on that shot for a while.
One thing I love about spatialization in movies, it's one of my favorite things. Geography, you could study it for the rest of your life of why some topological difference in one movie, or like you could talk about Raiders of the Ark, the opening scene, about how that's a masterpiece in terms of like we're moving left to right, we're moving right to left, we know when the speed is picking up and all that stuff, and all it's done by cues and not necessarily by the object of the big boulder rolling down. One of the things that I noticed in this movie that I was like, that is such an effective thing, that I almost think that more horror movies and more like action movies should employ. And it made me actually think of Die Hard with the diagonal stairs they use all the time in that movie, is that in this movie, if you're outside, almost all of the positions of the camera are behind a T intersection, so that you can see the foreground as the subject, and you can see wherever they're going, which is off screen, you can see behind them usually some visibility that they're not looking at, that someone could just pop up and shoot them at any time. So there's this sense of fear that goes along with just the cinematography and the positioning of these shots.
Same with the editing, like the sniper shot scene, and this is not a new game, but they keep showing like him looking, shot of his finger, like not on the trigger but sitting with the safety, his eye, and then you'll see someone in the room, and you'll go over there for a while, and it shows like someone like drinking some water, conversation, and these moments where that where it's like things are happening in the room around them. At any point in time, it can be interrupted, but there's this like pacing of like, guy over here, guy drinking water. We step over with him. He's talking to another guy. We go back to the sniper. Someone goes to take a piss. Grenade goes through, and it's like anything else, and you're just like, oh shit,
Not
like
only is that done for like the pacing that you're like mentioning, and like the urgency and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I love what it does thematically. Is it really shows the faith in the protocol that these people have. Like the moment where Cosmo Jarvis gets up because he's like, I gotta like piss or something like that. And he's like, because he's been on the scope for so long, and his right-hand man, the guy who's been like feeding him and just like taking notes the whole time, takes over the scope. And so while Cosmo Jarvis is doing all that, and you explain like people are drinking water, it checks out with all the other things, something very important happens, and their main stick guy isn't on the stick. And there's a protocol where it's like, okay, we have to all be calm, and it's not like, let me get on that real quick. He's like, I'm going to announce this and you're going to do these things. And then when there's a lull, Cosmo Jarvis like looks at him, is like, is this the time? And they nod and they quickly like swap. But it's like to show that how much faith they have in that protocol and reasons for that. This is not me trying to say like protocol is bullshit, but it's just this illusion of safety that people put on, that we go, that's what this scene is. And that's why it's an important scene, because when you don't have the protocol, your mind goes fucking everywhere, because you're like, what about that? Should I worry about that? Should I worry about that? And all that stuff's going on, and you're designed as a soldier, I assume, this is what it seems like all the education it goes from what I've heard about soldiers, you're designed to be a very effective tool in one thing at a time, and then you pivot using the protocols to do another thing if something comes up. But it's all a way to control the mess. And it's so good to show like they're like, oh, they're on top of it, even though they're like missing some stuff. The protocol gives them this sense of control.
Yeah.
And then the movie just destroys it.
And again,
like
even the protocol continues even when the grenade goes in. But like, and then the moment it all goes out, like one of the things with Will Poulter's character is he speaks very professionally. He's a leader. And then when the other guy comes in, the first thing he says to him is like, bro,
I'm done. Yeah,
I'm all fucked up. He just talks like a human again. Like he just, that's when you realize it, where it's like, he can't even speak. Like, and even before that, they're talking very like robotically about things that are still fucking scary. Yeah. But at that moment, it's like he's just a kid again.
And they do it again. This is why it's kind of Wire-esque too. That's why I think I thought of Generation Kill so often. Yeah. Is that when the Alpha 2 comes in and the guy you tell that Coulter tells like, hey, I'm fucked, you should take over. He is like, now he's in control and he's acting that role and he's playing that part, and it's really like, now you get the feeling that, okay, maybe there's a chance they're going to get back to this. And then there's this moment where they call their CO over the comms, and the guy says, we're just not going to get the tanks that you ordered, basically. Yeah, and his response to that is lie. Go back on, act like you're the CEO and say, I give authority to allow these tanks. Just do it.
Which is great, because it shows the indifference where the people above is like, we just decided you're not a priority.
Yeah, and therefore the protocols will not save you.
I'm a priority. I am going to just cheat.
It's an illusion of safety. The only real safety is a tank, and even that, depending on the enemy, isn't that safe. So it's great at showing those like shades of, feeling.
That's another. Control. And maybe, I don't know how the story went, but that's just a really good writing idea, which is you bring a tank in, blow that thing up, it doesn't help, and then the entire thing is we need to get another tank here, and by the time that tank gets there, it's like,
your faith is very shattered.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a good idea to be like, okay, this thing that you think is the savior isn't, and now they need one again. And now you're watching and you're like, fuck, is that going to work out? Because they've already established
they've already shown
rule.
that they can shoot down tanks.
Yeah.
So you're just gambling if they have another tank gun.
It's very good storytelling.
And turns out tanks are very effective as long as you aren't getting an anti-tank missile to the face.
Yeah, that's why they call it that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, I was impressed. Overall, didn't expect to enjoy a war film as much as I did.
Same here.
And I think it's because it's almost allergic to a lot of the tendencies of a lot of war films. So if it's one of the kind of things where you're like, well, I like Alex Garland and I'll give a shot to this new guy, and I kind of do like war films, you're probably going to see something you haven't seen. And if you don't like war films, it'll be the least warlike it'll probably have erased a lot of the stuff you don't like about it, because it's not about rah anybody. It's not a patriotic film or anything like that.
Yeah. I have nothing more to say. I think you summed it up there.
Yeah.
Very pleasant surprise.
Pleasant surprise for I
started
really,
watching it almost like it was homework, and then I just enjoyed it.
That's what I'm worried about, because I watched it and I know that everyone's going to have that response, because they're like, oh, another one of these? Is it a deep dive into... And that's a damning thing, because we're not going to get out of this place that we're at with movies, where these kind of movies are even made anymore.
Yeah, we can just watch
like, this is lucky. I think Alex Garland had to step in and be like, this movie should be made.
Yeah.
Because he was hot, in the last 10 years in terms of whatever his touch is pretty much gold. And
he was
I'm
like,
scared
if you make
about
this movie, I'll make you so many movies. And then they made it, and he's like, I'm thinking of retiring from directing.
I
and
love
like,
him
you
so
fucked
much.
us, Garland.
You fucked us, Garland. Well, I mean, no one knows what anyone's doing anyway. It's all a fucking mess. But it's one of those things where I'm just like, this was made for $20 million. And this feels like a high budget $20 million. Like, it honestly, they had to do a lot of stuff to get it under 20, because it feels a lot bigger than it. And this box office is at this point over 30. So it's not a great success. But I mean, it depends on how they did the bookkeeping and what that budget, how real that budget is. It could have made its money back. But we're unsure. And for A24 to have made this, it's one of those things where it's just like, damn, if they're making this kind of caliber films and people are just not really watching it, like, what else can we do to get more $20 million features made?
It's a war film. I get it. Where, like we said this, where it's like, if they made a $20 million horror movie, it'd probably do it'd do great. Where it's like, it's also what are people in the mood for genre-wise
at the time,
So, like, it's just, I don't know, Wars never feels like it's in style. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like there was ever a time where it was like, yeah, we're into war movies.
Well, I mean, the 90s and 2000s were kind of...
That was as good as it got.
Yeah. But as a genre...
And for some reason, we soured on war in the 2000s. Who can say? Who can say
that by the 2010s we're like... Yeah, 2010s did not have many war films, to be honest. Or if they did, they were like the 1917, let's talk about old wars.
Yeah.
But yeah,
again, this
in
was
terms
like,
of this modern warfare kind of stuff.
Yeah, and as we get older, we're going to see more where they're like, oh, Iraq War is a free game. We can stick it in a Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go. And it's going to be a real bummer.
Yeah, it's real dystopic already, dude.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yep.
There's going to be a drone movie that comes out at some point. That'll change the game.
I'm waiting for the first 9/11 movie that doesn't handle it with any reference. Or like Titanic, the Titanic version of 9/11.
Oh, God. That'd be fucking excellent.
Yeah. Get Celine Dion. She'll be alive. It'll be fine. But like, I'm just imagining that where it's like, I guess I was going to say a love story, but 9/11, they did that. It's called Remember Me. But you get it. Where it's just like really gratuitous.
Dave, right before we started this podcast, you said it's up to you, Abe. You got to keep me from talking about 9/11 again and ending a podcast with 9/11. You failed,
sir.
And I fucked up, dude. I'm so sorry. You snuck it by me, you little sneaky bastard.
Abe, thank you so much for being here.
You got it, man.
You're the 9 to my 11. Listen.
Damn it.
Before we get out of here, you want to plug some stuff here at the very end?
Yeah, we did it at the top, but if you don't recall the name, it's patreon.com/smallbeans. Hear me pontificate more about movies.
Yes.
For a small fee, but there's also free stuff there too, so maybe you wet your whistle first, do the free stuff, and then you're like, okay, maybe I'm going to go whole hog into the small bean
and get the balls deep.
Yep. And that's on the Patreon. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Patreon.com/smallbeans. And then you guys know our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. Check that out. We have a merch store. Gamefullyunemployed.com gets you there. That's all. We don't have to say much. Check out Juror Number 2. I watched that too. I watched Juror Number 2, Abe.
Wait,
Have you watched
I thought it was
Juror
Juror
Number 2?
number 4?
Oh, fuck. Which
Is it
juror is
Juror
it?
number...
I thought he was Juror Number 2.
Nope, you're right. I think Juror number 4 because that's like the big meaty role in 12 Angry Men.
What'd you think of Juror Number 2, Abe?
I didn't see Juror number 2. That's the Clint Eastwood though, right?
It is.
I heard he was
All right.
pretty good.
We'll
I mean,
meet
Clint
back
Eastwood
here.
is hit or miss. I mean, he's an old fucker now, but he's had some great ideas. You know,
My quick review of Juror Number 2.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right.
Hey, listen, our music is produced by Chris Corlew. You can find him on twitter.com as the Corlew or go to shipwreckedsailor.bandcamp.com. Our channel artwork is produced by Michael Vincent Bramley. For more of his work, go to mvbramley.art. Our episode artwork is by Justin Brown, available on Twitter as Justin T. Brown or at artnessbyjustinbrown.com. And finally, additional artwork is by Starlene Hodge. You can find her work at starlenearts.com or on Twitter as StarleneX. Cool. Goodbye.